So here we understood how the evolution takes place and how to study the evolution. Now let us see the evolution. It takes place in stages. It is not a single step process. The drastic changes are not seen in just single generation. Say, how can complex changes takes place with a single variation? For example, there is a species called X. There is a species called Y. So this species is evolved into X, evolved into Y. In X, there are no eyes. Eyes are not there. But in Y, eyes are there. This feature is found. But eye is a very complex organ. How can it can form with a single change in the DNA of this X? So the DNA of X is variated. Some variation happened in the DNA of X. But how can one single change in the gene, how can it bring such a big change in its body? No eyes, eye. Eye is not a small factor. Very big complex organ. So do you think that such kind of drastic changes will come in a very single step, in a very single generation with a single change in the gene? No. It happens so gradually. So the development of organs or systems, they have evolved gradually. We can understand this. You can see the number of, you can see that different species. You see the fishes, you see the reptiles, birds, mammals. All these four have heart to pump the blood. Fish is having heart, reptiles are having heart, birds are having heart, humans are having heart. But what is the difference? The fish is having a heart made up of two chambers. Reptiles, they have three chambers. Amphibians, they have three chambers. Frog is having three chambered heart. Reptiles, they have three chambered, partly four. So the birds are having partly four chamber. Humans, you can see that completely four chambered heart. So heart is there, but in evolution, the change is gradual or step by step. The evolution takes place in stages. In stages. And one more important thing to be noticed here, there are some variations in the organisms that are used for one purpose in the beginning. Later, they might be used for some other purpose. The feathers in the birds, initially they might be used to insulate their body from the cold weather. Feathers give protection from cold weather. They insulate the bodies. They prevent the escape of temperature from the bodies to the environment. So they provide this kind of insulation. But later when the bird grows up, it may use the feathers as wings to fly. So later it is used for flight. So change is useful for one property becomes useful for another way. That is the example there. So far we are discussing about the evolution of the organisms that became extinct, not existed now. But in the present scenario, have we seen the formation of any different species? That is by bringing changes? Yes. So let us see the evolution of cabbage by artificial selection. So the evolution is a natural process which happens by natural selection and genetic drift. But here there are certain conditions that can be arranged by the farmers to go for artificial selection, selecting a particular character and propagating to the coming up progeny generations. So by that they can go for development of a variety which we can practically see in the wild cabbage. So the wild cabbage is grown. Some farmers, they wanted to have the leaves with very short gaps like a ball. So it led to the formation of a cabbage. So the cabbage is nothing but the leaves which are very close to other. The stem is very much reduced. The leaves are very close to one another and it is a very dwarf plant. The internodal space is very less in cabbage. Leaves are arranged one after the other, covering each other to form a ball called cabbage. And in some cases, some farmers wanted to have some swollen parts like kohlrabi, swollen parts. In other cases, They wanted to develop with the sterile flowers, that is cauliflower. And they wanted to develop with arrested flowers, that is broccoli. Broccoli you can see in purple color or in green in color, appears like a cauliflower. Broccoli is available, cauliflower is available, kohlrabi is available, kale. Here they wanted to grow large leaves, long leaves, that is kale. The kale is different from cabbage, both are similar, but here the arrangement and shape of the leaves is different. Kale is different, cabbage is different. And red cabbage, of course it appears in purple or red color. So that is a red cabbage. In this way, wild cabbage is propagated into different forms by artificial selection. Natural selection happens naturally. Artificial selection is done by the farmers. So this much of variety of these cabbages have come into existence, which we can see in the practical scenario. So here the other method of tracing the evolutionary relationship is DNA analysis. By analyzing the DNA of different species, we can understand the evolutionary relationships. So let us see some more important points about the evolution, the assumptions about the ideas about the evolution. Let us check what we are thinking about evolution are true or not. Evolution is not equated with progress. It is not progress. Evolution doesn't mean that the extinct of one organism leads to the development of new species. One common ancestor, that is from one common ancestor, two different group organisms may evolve. So that is the one thing, and this is not progress. It is not a linear growth. This is not a growth like a chain. It is like a tree. It is expanding. The only one point we see it here, during the process of evolution, more complicated, complex organisms are evolved. You see the humans, more complex organisms are evolved. It doesn't mean that only the complex organisms will be able to survive. It is not that. Because the organisms that are existing from a very long time, that is in the form of a small bacteria that have a very simple structure, are still existing now. It doesn't mean that evolution makes the organism so complex. It makes the organisms only that can survive in the changed environment. So it is not that. But anyway, here we see the only progress, that is that complex organisms are evolved in the process of evolution. And it is a very gradual process. And you see that the relations, we may be thinking that, okay, humans are evolved from chimpanzees. It's not a fact that humans are not evolved from chimpanzees. Humans and chimpanzees evolved from a common ancestor. Human, chimpanzee. These two are evolved from a common ancestor. So, by number of generations, the changes have come. It doesn't mean that from the chimpanzees, we are not evolved. So, from a common ancestor, two different species may evolve. They will be closely related. Say for example, here A is there. From A, B and C have come. From B, D, E have come. From C, F, G have come. So this is the way they are evolved. Now let us say A is the ancestor, common ancestor. If you see the similarities, B and C are much more closely related. They have more similarities. And if you see D and G, they have very less similarities. You will find more similarities between you and your own brother or sister when compared to your cousin. Who is your cousin? Your cousin is related to your father. Your father may be having brother. So your grandfather has got two children. Say for example, this is your grandfather and this is your father and this is your uncle, that is brother of your father, and this is you D is you and your brother, and here your cousin 1, cousin 2. So cousin 1, cousin 2 will have more similarities compared to your brother or you. You and your brother will have more similarities compared to that cousin. So in this way, in this hierarchy, you will be having more similarities which are very close, and you will be having more similarities with the other species which you have come from a common ancestor. In this case, humans and chimpanzees have come from a common ancestor. That is the reason why you find more similarities. So now let us look at the human evolution, how the human evolution took place. For thousands of years, there is no evolution in the Homo sapiens species. The same Homo sapiens species is continued in all the various continents. Of course, if we see the ancestor of all the humans, it is the same ancestor, and we all have come from our homeland, that is the Africa. But now if you see the people of different country, you find different races: Americans, whites and blacks, Negroes, Chinese, Japanese, Indians. So all these have different skin color, different features, but the DNA, it remains same, and all these different races, they can reproduce one with the other. Interracial reproduction is possible. So it shows that we are all same species again. But we all started as a common ancestor, that is the Homo sapiens is found in Africa. So from the Africa, some people, they spread in the Africa, and some migrated to West Asia, from there to Central Asia, there to Eurasia, to South Asia and to East Asia, and from there to Indonesia, Philippines, Australia, and there to America. In this way, the spread of the people, population, human population has taken place. So this was happened in groups because people were nomadic. Humans were nomadic, just moving in groups. Sometimes they may move forward, sometimes they may move backward. It is a haphazard movement. So in this haphazard movement, they have spread all over the planet. Now we are able to meet the people of various continents. But even then, still the genetic material, of course there are some differences in the genetic sequences of all these various races, but still they are able to reproduce with the other races. So every organism in this planet, we see it's the evolution is a continuous process, and whatever the organisms are existing now, they are making their life, they are living their life in a better way with all the variations that they have acquired.